Hey, everybody. Rex Bear League Project. How the heck are you? Today we have the man, the myth, the living legend, Dr. Kevin Hogan with us. So excited for the opportunity. I think Kevin's one of the few people that's like travels more than me. So that's pretty cool. And we're going to talk about, we're going to get into two different conversations here today, folks. You want to buckle up for this one and you want to get your organic popcorn and favorite beverage because part one, we're going to get into MK Ultra tactics that were used 40, 50 years ago and kind of evolved into what is performed today through many social media operations. I don't know, I'll just kind of leave it at that, kind of vague. Kevin will explain that better. But then for part two, what you're going to want to jump over to our Patreon page. We're going to talk about the origins of Jesus and the truth of Jesus connected to Christmas. It's absolutely incredible. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. Join us over on Patreon. But subscribe to Kevin's YouTube channel, Kevin Hogan. Check out kevinhogan.com and do yourself a favor. If you want to be, I don't know, if you want to, like know how to talk to people better and understand people better and understand body language and, I don't know, what would you say? Psychology, I guess, neurolinguistic programming a little bit. Like you definitely want to pick up Kevin's books. He has the best books out there. The Psychology of Persuasion was the book that I first read by Kevin that just kind of blew me away. And I've been a huge fan since. So go back and pick up those books. And also great books on religion that Kevin has recently put together. So just go to his Amazon page, check out his website, kevinhogan.com, and go back and listen to our previous podcasts. Plethora of podcasts at leadproject.com as well as Patreon, previous interviews. I think we've been talking now for about 10 years, man. Time is cruising, Kevin. Wow. And you're getting younger. So what are you doing, dude? How's that working out for you?
Corp. I wanted to thank Giant Mining Corp for sponsoring today's video. You can get their latest presentation on their website, www.giantminingcorp.com. But you know me, I'm a big fan of precious metals, industrial metals, and I'm always looking for new income streams. So I don't know if you've heard about the copper shortages, but there's some great opportunities right now in copper, and it just went political. So President Trump's Made in America agenda, eyeing import tariffs, the race to secure domestic supply just hit overdrive. Copper is charging back towards last year's record, which is hovering around $4.85 a pound as global stockpiles scrape 15-year lows. Enter Giant Mining Corp. Their ticker is BFGFF in the US and BFG in Canada, and their 9,800-acre Majuba Hill project sits in mining-friendly Nevada, right beside highway, rail, power, gas, and fiber. And recent drilling delivered a 170-foot copper zone, averaging 0.4% copper by a 10-foot streak running 4.4% copper. And this is the kind of punch majors pay billions for. Engineering firm Respec is already fast-tracking the first NI 43101 resource, so Majuba could leap from drill rig to development while rivals get tangled in new red tape. In a super cycle where projects that move fast win, Giant Mining checks every box. Discover more at giantminingcorp.com. Check them out on the OTC at BFGFF in the US and BFG in Canada. Now, there's obviously never any guarantees, so read the disclaimer, but there are some great opportunities right now. Check it out. You'll thank me later, and enjoy this presentation, ladies and gentlemen.
Out there.
Nobody, no, folks, I am you guys are on one side of the world, and I'm on the exact other side of the world in the Southeast Asian islands down here. So it's definitely an interesting experience. So MK Ultra, let's go right for it. So back in the 40s, you got Hitler, right? You got Hitler, and they do all these experiments on people, and it causes worldwide. It's like, oh, that's a terrible thing to do, and all that kind of stuff. And then all the countries started to realize, geez, wouldn't it be interesting to have somebody to do the assassination on that next person over there? Wouldn't it be interesting to have a way to get people to do things and act as agents for the governments of the world? This wasn't just the United States. This was China. China and Korea. They were leaders in thought control, if you will. And I use those words, leaders, as just saying excellence at what they do as opposed to how cool and wonderful it really is, which is horrifying. But basically the way it worked was this. Here's the short story on how MK Ultra started. It's pretty cool. I think it's cool. I don't like to talk about it usually because people then want to take the ideas and go like, oh, let's test our friends. So but here's the basics. Around in the 50s, after World War II, there was a war called the Korean War. For a lot of you guys who are younger, you're like, where's Korea? So I get that, okay? So the Korean War begins, right? And it goes on, and Americans were held hostage and prisoner in Korea. And then the Vietnam War starts very shortly thereafter. There was a contemporaneous overlap. And so and there's the Vietnam War. So once again, we're on the south side, and the Chinese and and by the way, guys, I'm sitting here in Southeast Asia. I hang out with Chinese people every day. I'm okay with it. Like, I'm cool everywhere. It's like, it's all good to me. So nobody hates me over here, at least not to my knowledge. Maybe the plan to assassinate me is coming tomorrow. I don't know. So anyway, I don't worry about stuff. Nothing. So anyhow, so so you've got what's happening in prisons is this, that there's this, like, it's the early days of major propaganda that could hurt people. And so just imagine that you're in a prison cell in Hanoi, or in North Vietnam, for example. And these are true stories. You can read some of these in Coffey's book, Richard Coffey's book, I think is Richard Coffey, called Beyond Survival. And he tells great stories about how the guards had come in and they would be there to torture him. But if he answered one question truthfully, then they would not torture him. And so they would ask him a question like, can you tell us if the United States is an absolutely perfect place to be, and if everybody in the United States is a perfect person? And the prisoners, to a person, said, well, of course they're not all perfect. They're not all perfect. They got their food for the day, right? No torture. Next day, the guys come in and they say, one question, you can either get your food or torture. Would you agree that some of the people in the United States of America are not acting in the best interests of the United States of America? Some. Well, yeah, so these are all POWs. They're angry and they hate these people, but some. And so they got their food because they said, yeah, some are. So what they did is they followed this all the way through to, would you say that 10% of the people in the United States are bad people and 90% are good? And then they would take it further and further and further until the statements were like, do you even trust going back to the United States? Do you even feel comfortable going back at all? And the guys started to answer no. And this was the beginning of brainwashing. Okay. So this is how brainwashing started in our era, in our last 100 years. And this is true in both Korea and in Vietnam. Now, these are really brilliant psychological tools, because this is exactly how you do therapy. This is exactly how you do any psychological work that requires people to change. So if you think about it for just a second, it's basic behavioral psychology. That's all it is. It's stimulus response conditioning. Say something, answer the truth, and you get food. Lie, and you get a shock. Okay? So now, let's go fast forward. Let's go to I don't remember the exact year, but let's call it 1955, okay? Elvis is singing in Memphis, and meanwhile, we're working on, the CIA has put together, the president has ordered that they start working on these same tools that the Koreans were using against us, the North Koreans were using against us, run by China. And by the way, guys, I'm not saying China is a bad country or another. Do you know the Chinese publish more of my books than just about any country in the world? And by the way, so do the Russians. All right. So I have friends everywhere, really. And everybody knows that I don't have a axe to grind with anybody. It's like, I get it.
That's
so
cool.
Oh, you do that good. You can unmute better than I can.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think that's pretty cool that, you've got a global audience, you're friends with people around the world, and you don't let nationality affect what you think of somebody. That's awesome.
Yeah, never. And I find it humorous when people, like here in the Philippines, where I'm at today, in Manila, if your skin is sort of a darker tone, not black, not white, but you're sort of Asian looking, you are actually looked down upon more than somebody who looks more white, which is really interesting. And so the girls will do makeup and they will make up their faces so they appear to be more white than they really are. And that's how they handle this sort of stereotype, the stereotypical thing. So anyway, so this is it should not be here. This is ridiculous, right? But anyway, that's another story, and I'll come back to that later on. So the government authorizes our government authorizes. Okay, go ahead. We're gonna start a program where we want to know what it is that's going to change behavior faster than what the Koreans are doing to us, the Chinese and the Koreans. And so the Koreans and the Chinese are the bad guys in this image because they're hurting our guys in our country. Okay, which makes sense. So that's how this plays. So basically, the shortest possible story here is that the government at today, LSD is common. Today, LSD is out there. Back in about, and I'm making this number up, and you can Google it, but I'm guessing 19. It was right around the time. I think of everything in, in terms of like what happened in Elvis's career at this time. So, but about right around 54. So 54, 55, all of a sudden they're starting this idea. You know what? If you electric shock people, you're going to get some change out of people if they do bad stuff. And if you torture people, they're more likely to give you a confession. And there's this new drug called LSD. Now, what's hilarious, I mean, just hilarious, given the light of the last 20 years, 30 years, and all the the drug issues of the United States and borders and all this other kind of stuff. The United States of America CIA government purchased every possible ounce of LSD on planet Earth. Period. Nobody knows that. Okay, nobody knows that, but that's a fact. And at the time, in their money, it was worth about $250,000, which today, if you did the math, it would be about $10 million, maybe. So that's how little LSD was on the planet back in the day. So the United States bought it, and now check this out. This is what's really interesting, and this is why I've always hesitated to talk about this. Is they hired institutions. The government hired institutions. I'm not going to name specific universities, as I'm not going to get in trouble for that. But I'll tell you, they hired universities and hospitals and clinics and psychologists, people like me, psychiatrists. They hired anybody who was involved in change. Okay, and they had a strategy. And the basic strategy was, can we mix LSD with torture and with electroshock and basic behavioral, here's your good thing if you do good, here's your bad thing if you do bad. And so they put the whole thing together, the CIA did, and they tried to figure out, like, and this period, this project went on, MK Ultra. So it sounds really cool and very devious and devilish, which it was, but MK Ultra actually means, all it was literally somebody like flipping a coin, letting it land on a Ouija board. Whoa, I don't know what you got there, man, but letting it land on a Ouija board, and whatever letter it lands on is the first letter of M, and then they flip the next one and it lands on a K, and then they use, like, what's a really cool word to describe this program? Oh, it's the Ultra program. Okay, so they named it MK Ultra. So for all these years we've wondered, for 50 years we've wondered, until it was mostly declassified, and essentially in 75-ish, I don't recall the exact year, but I bet you it's on what you're looking at on the screen somewhere there. Well, good luck reading that. You might have to be on drugs or something to read that. Um, but anyway, around 75, the president says, no more MK Ultra. Well, by then we already knew. that you could change with electroshock, you could change people with drugs, you could change people and get them to do pretty much anything you wanted. And the desired goal was to get people to become essentially what was called a Manchurian candidate. Can we get somebody to go to a foreign country somewhere and assassinate the person without them knowing it? Okay, in other words, you're doing it sort of like, I don't know it. Well, here's the deal. Have you ever heard of Rohypnol?
No.
Rohypnol?
Uh-uh.
Oh, so Rohypnol is this. It's a drug. It's called the date rape drug, and so date rape drug. And so for about 15 years in the United States, it's been fairly popular among people buying the date rape drugs. So they're going to go to a party. A guy buys one Rohypnol, gives it to a girl. That was the telephone falling off, guys. Don't worry about it. It's okay. No phones died in this telecast. So and so anyway, so Rohypnol, it turns out, is like sort of like blackout drinking, where it's like you black out, you don't know what happens, you have no memory of what happens, and that was what the whole point of MK Ultra was, sort of, was to, can you get a person to black out, but then go and assassinate somebody or kill somebody or become like a killing machine, to where you're told to go do something and you can do it. Well, it turned out after the 70s, we figured out this is way easier than what people think. This is, we don't need drugs to do this. We don't need electroshock to do this. We don't need the use of loud noises. Do you remember Waco? Do you remember Waco?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. That was a very controversial and terrible moment in the history of the US on all sides. Mute.
I was pretty because it was about a religious issue, and because I believed very much like the people in Waco. I'm very much have that Jewish Messianic Jew feel, and I'm not a cult kind of guy. I don't really go out for hanging out with people at church on Tuesday, no matter what their religion is. So but from a religious standpoint, it was pretty clear these people are in there for Passover and unleavened bread, which is a Jewish holiday, simple holiday. We all do it. They're people like me, and it just means that they're not going to answer the telephone. While you can sit there and tell them you're going to blow them up, but they're not going to come. Like, they're worshiping their God, right? And so the short story here is that I wrote two editorials for the USA Today back to back, like a couple of days apart, and I still got those at home. And I said, look, don't go in and kill these people, because like all they're doing is worshiping. That's the whole deal. They're not trying to resist. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just doing what they believe is correct. Whether they're right or wrong, who knows? But they are doing exactly what the Bible says to do. That's a fact. So I put it up there, and a couple of the guys who made it out of they called it a compound. This is one of those beautiful words that governments use. Have you ever noticed that when they're going to have like a great program like Making America Great Again? Nope, not picking on Trump or anything. I can pick on anyone you want me to. So, but you got Making America Great Again, a great slogan, great thing, right? So, but if you're in a compound, well, that's not like an apartment complex.
Sounds like
right?
a military facility, almost.
It does, doesn't it? And it's like, you're like, wow, okay, so that's the way they looked at it. And so of course we brought the tank and the fire, and then we burned the place down and all that. So anyhow, so we were able to convince our military, Janet Reno and company, to go and 86 these people, kill them all, and a few people survived. A few kids survived. A few adults. David Thibodeau survived. A few others, but not many. And it was a very sad point in history, but it shows the power of brainwashing, and it shows exactly how we use words to create enemies. Right? It's like over here, I'll tease people. I give people a hard time all day long, no matter where I'm at. So I just got back from Indonesia, where I did a gig, and I teased them. I says, "Hello, you guys, bunch of nice Chinese people here, I see." And of course, everybody smiles, because Chinese and Indonesia, nothing. They're not alike at all. They're like It's like UK and US, right? So they know I'm giving them a hard time, right? And that's the deal, though. But there's other people who separate and they say, oh, well, those people are from China, so they're bad people, right? Or they did something back in 2020 that caused a big problem, or whatever. So anyhow, so what this evolved originally out of just this made up name was really a very devious, brilliantly put together, conceived plot to find out what it was that we could do to create killing machines, people that would go and do anything we wanted them to do, period. And it's super easy to do this. You don't have to torture. They had some great, and I use the word great like amazing, impressive, I don't know, like terrifying things. Like they would put a person, they'd strap them down in a in a big chair, and then they would start turning lights on, and the lights would go like this, strobe lights, strobe all around. They'd inject them with LSD, and then they would say, like, are you okay to go kill person X? I'm not going to name any names, but yeah, sure, I'll do that. And here's the thing: what we know today in 2024 is that you can get the same exact result without any drugs, and you can get the same result without any torture. It's not that hard to do these tools, but it started out, and we wouldn't have the knowledge today. This is one of the if there's an upside to the torture that Hitler did, it was the medical experiments they did on totally innocent Jews, totally innocent Poles who had done nothing wrong, and they did all these really horrible things to these people. But we found out what the lengths of what we could tolerate was in pain, in how long you could live if somebody did horrible things to you, psychological distress and all that kind of stuff. So if I make light of it just because it's very stressful for me to think about it, and it's very personal because a lot of this stuff would happen to people that I know their families, like it's like, it's hard to think about it, and it's not fun to talk about. But I think MK Ultra, the whole concept, is really important to understand. Now, I have a question for you, Rex, to give me a chance to get a glass of water. What have you heard about MK Ultra over the years that I didn't just?
Well, I thought MK was a term for mind control or mind comp, almost in a sense, like a German mind control. You'll eat the bugs and you like it. But that's one thing that I could have been way off on. Another thing that I've studied up a bit on are the different programs that they had back in the day, such as like Project Monarch was one where they would create essentially an assassin that could also be like a sexual, like the Russian spy chick, super hot, super beautiful. And they look, like, oh, I'm just going to go do some ballerina stuff for a little while, some yoga. But then they're like a 4th degree black belt and they can take people out with their fingernail and stuff. They're just super, super assassins. So I studied a bit on the different projects, and they would compartmentalize people certain times by creating a shock to the system that was so traumatic that they would create they would disassociate from that personality and create an entirely new personality. And there were certain key words that were used to trigger that person to do a specific task. They perform the task and then they go back into like their other personality. So I thought it was to create somebody that would go out and do something and they wouldn't even know that they did it because they would have a completely separate personality. So, I mean, if you want to create a spy, the best way to create a spy is them not even knowing they're a spy. So that was just but that's from like the 70s, I think, right? Like that's old school stuff.
First of all, the keyword triggers were real. Then they still work today, by the way. These are what we would call post-hypnotic suggestions. Now, by the way, there's a curve of people who this is very effective with, and a curve of people who don't respond to keyword triggers at all. So basically, have you ever seen a stage hypnosis show or anything like that? Like,
I mean, I've seen videos, yeah, where they look for certain traits out of people, and they're like, "Oh, that person can hypnotize easy. Come on up," but that person doesn't know it as they're pulling them up because they're looking for traits, right?
Correct. And so when you think about how a stage hypnosis show works, the guy brings up 20 people who have raised their hands raised their hand and said they want to participate, right? I am a willing volunteer. Then the second thing they say is, everybody watch your arm raise in front of you. Raise higher and higher and higher. Everybody whose arm doesn't raise higher and higher, they go back, he sends them back to the audience. Now, see how close you can get your hands together without touching. And don't let them touch, and don't let them touch. And now notice how they feel like metal and you can't move them at all. And the guys who go like this, they send them back to their seats. So basically what's happening is they're creating the most suggestive people here. They're finding out who those people are. Those people then are the ones who grab a mop, a wet mop, and they'll sing, like, Elvis into it or something like that, or they'll dance, or they'll sing, or they'll do a striptease, or you name it. I mean, it depends on what hotel you're at, where it was back in the day, but that's exactly what you're looking for, is people who are incredibly suggestible. And we'll come to all this later, but that's the answer, is that the hypnosis, which does not work with everyone in the traditional sense of hypnosis. We can talk about that another show, I guess, because it is hypnosis all by itself. I mean, real hypnosis is pretty amazing. And had they used this in MK Ultra, they would have solved this way earlier. It's much easier to get compliance to pretty much any behavior in the world if you just ask the right people and you filter them correctly. But it took the CIA time to figure out how they were going to pick people. So anyhow, so there's that.
And now they can just pick and choose via social media. Oh, let's get that one. They would never.
Well, anytime. No, of course not. So, and today we have.
Curveball out there, didn't I? Sorry, I tried to mute myself. I've been watching way too many TV shows of espionage. Jack Reacher, have you seen that? Anyway, sorry.
No, but I watched John Wick 4 the other night, which I thought was pretty cool and typical.
And she's probably like, what's the body count on that? Anyway, sorry.
Oh, it was like 700. So, so anyway, but basically, these are basically the creation of killing machines, which are pretty normal. And there's nothing all that. For me, I watch this behavior. I've seen it forever, and you watch the people who go, and they go to places, and they go totally willingly and actually happily, and it's because they have been culturized into doing certain behaviors. Brainwashed is a good word. Thought control is probably the best word. By the way, for people who are interested in this stuff, really interested in this kind of a subject, the best writer on thought control is without question Jay Lifton. Jay Lifton, Lifton. The guy's about 90 years old. He's written about the Korean War and the brainwashing that happened there, and about CIA, and about just every single aspect of unethical and immoral persuasion that there is. And I've really enjoyed his books over the years. The guy's a genius. So there's that. Then there's a couple things. As time went on, so once the mid-70s hits, you can't do any more. Well, you're not supposed to do any more LSD experiments, and you're not supposed to do any more electroshock. But that doesn't mean you can't fake the electroshock. And so there's this dude, Stanley Milgram, who puts together at Yale this amazing experiment about where he's got people in a room, and there's a subject here at a control board that has dials for electricity. At 300 volts it means sudden death imminent, and all this kind of stuff. And so the premise is that there's a teacher in the room, and the teacher says, "Oh, we just want to see if we can teach people how to use this." It's the same thing as brainwashing, is what they're testing here, but they want to test and see how many people actually will kill somebody. That's the whole point. Because Milgram's question was real simple: how is it possible that the Nazis got people to kill other people that were in it, were victims too? How do they get them to kill other people? Okay, so it's a pretty sad story. So Milgram does this entire massive set of experiments. So he hooks up this old man, the same old man in every place they tested this. electrodes, right? He goes into this other room, sits in a chair, and you can hear him going, they're having the conversation like, and okay, we're going to put this up to you here. We're going to put this here, here, here. Take off your hat, blah, blah, all this kind of stuff. So the guy's now hooked up, and you can hear it as the subject, the person who's, a college student comes in, or a nurse or a doctor or a psychiatrist or a medical doctor or a mother. They tested all these people. So here's what we found. When Stanley Milgram would stand over the test subject, the person who was in there, he would say, go ahead and give him the first word, dog. And so Stanley, the guy in the other room, spells D-O-G. Cool, good job. Okay, and then fraught. Oh, F-R-O-T, and then he says, give him 30 volts. Ding. Well, 30 volts it's like kind of like touching the carpet on or a curtain. It's nothing, And then they ask, it's a spelling test. All they're trying to do is just spell by negative reinforcement. That's all. Teach spelling by negative reinforcement. So finally, as they start to get up to this point of 300 volts where death is imminent, 60% of all men who were at the board, all these students that were men, were willing to kill the person because Milgram said, it's okay, go ahead. It's negative. They didn't get the word right. They know what they're in for. And they would do it. And sometimes the guy in there would die. Sometimes he wouldn't. I mean, remember, he's not really hooked up, right? Okay. So that's important.
I was just going to say real quick. So I saw that experiment, or a remake of that experiment, and it blew me away that just because somebody that appears to have authority, they tell them to push that button, and they literally were pushing that button until they thought that other person, they were shocking, that they weren't shocking, but they thought they were, to death. That blows me away, Kevin.
It's incredible. And the French, see, now we're not allowed to do this experiment anymore in the United States because it has ethical ramifications. Just imagine, and there's some logic to it. Like, imagine that you were part of the thing, and imagine that you actually thought you killed the guy in that room. Okay. Well, we know that if you think you did, that's almost like inducing a false confession. I mean, we know that it's not that hard to then have that person believe that for the rest of their life, that they killed somebody. So, but the French don't have this rule. And so the French, if you Google sometime, you guys can Google game show Stanley Milgram experiment. Game show Stanley Milgram experiment. 86% of all the people that participated in the survey, okay, and this is actually, you can see the video on YouTube, and you can look at you can read the articles on Google, and you can see that 86, that's 6 out of 7, guys. 6 out of 7 people were willing to kill the guy in the other room if he misspelled the word. Just that simple, okay? By just because he was being told by a TV host that they're on television, right? Okay. Now that's pretty amazing, right? Now there are a couple of cute, sad side notes here that I'll just mention before we go on. And one of them is that when they tested women, they were like, oh, women would never do this. Women would never kill the guy in the next room. Okay, so 60% of men killed the guy in the next room, even though nobody was ever hurt, right? Okay, so when they brought women in, 68% killed the guy in the next room. Okay, 68. So more women were likely to kill the man in the next room than the men. And then they came up with a thought. They were like, and then they tested medical doctors who were happy to kill the guy in the next room, psychiatrists happy to kill the guy in the next room, psychologists happy to kill the guy in the next room. Everybody, every demographic that they could think of was happy to kill the guy in the next room. Okay, so 60 to 75% of the time, and then we have the French experiment from about, maybe it's 10 years now. It's on YouTube, but it's about 10 years, and about 86%, because you're on TV. When you're on TV, when you're on TikTok, you'll do anything, So just you guys have to check it out. So anyhow, so they were like, what is the deal here? How can that many? So they came up with 2 ideas. One was Maybe it's because this is at Yale, and maybe it's because a Yale professor is telling them what to do. So they took this to a warehouse and they put Stanley Milgram in there, Professor Milgram, and the same numbers came up. But then they replaced Milgram and they took him out and they stuck in an associate professor that nobody had ever heard of. And now nobody killed anybody in the next room. No one.
You know, it makes me think of the people right now, overall, obviously not everybody, but it seems like they're more divided than ever on any topic. Like, it doesn't even have to be politics, but people that I know that are very down to earth, very level headed, very kind people that give you the shoes off their feet if you needed them and they'd walk home barefoot. Like, they think that the administration that's coming into power is like the Antichrist. And they're talking like people I know, and including myself, used to talk 15, 20 years ago about being concerned about getting rounded up by like FEMA camps now. I'm like, you got to calm down. It's going to be okay. Really. So weird how this. So I'm mentioning this because like you're showing how easy it is to manipulate somebody into thinking that they're actually going to shock somebody to death when it's just an experiment, but they think they're actually doing that. You put somebody charismatic in power, and if you figure out the right person, then half the world's going to think that they're Jesus, and the other half the world's going to think they're the devil, metaphorically speaking. Like right now is what happened. That's half the world thinks that, Jesus is coming into office and he's going to save everybody, and the other half thinks it's going to be the devil. It's so weird. I think it's like, talk about MK Ultra. Do you think that that's a part of this whole operation or what? Kevin, are you there? Did we lose Kevin again?
Oh, poor Kevin. He's not very smart when it comes to technology. Poor kid.
Oh man. I thought you had him. So anyway.
Look, I'm not as old as I used to be. I mean, I'm working on it. So, where are we going then? One of the most powerful persuasion tools of all time is the common enemy. And the common enemy means if Rex and I both decide that we don't like the Chicago Cubs, and we start saying we hate the Chicago Cubs, and the Chicago Cubs are terrible, and we don't want anything to do with them, and they're horrible, and they're bad for the country, and they're bad for baseball, and they're bad for this. All of a sudden, people are going to start following us. Everybody? No. But 50%, not a problem. So all of a sudden, people are going to come and they're going to find, because you're going to point out a reason why the Chicago Cubs are bad. Look what they're doing. They're all getting paid millions. They don't care if they win or lose. All they care is if they get paid. They don't want to get injured. It's the management that wants to win. It's the managers that want to win. Their jobs are based upon this. But the Cubs team, this year, they were the highest paid payroll next to the Dodgers, I believe it was. And they made millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars as players, and they're out there and they don't give a damn, and they're playing like crap. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. We're going to make baseball great again. We're just going to do it, and we're going to fix it up to where it makes baseball great again, to where we want to win, and you're paid to win. That's what we have to do. Now, that's exactly how it all programs in. The common enemy. The common enemy is the Chicago Cubs. And it's not the management in this case. In this case, it's the players, okay? And the arguments are not totally unreasonable. They're believable. They're plausible. Like, yeah, that's true. The guy does make the same whether he wins or loses, right? Okay? So that's pretty interesting. So that's basically what's happening around the world is you're seeing the common enemy. The common enemy. And then what happens when the common enemy, like now all of a sudden the Cub players are like, hey, we wanted to win that game. What the hell are you talking about? I had to win the game. We have to go out there. My paycheck's partially based on winning. It's like, what, I mean, that matters. It's expected value of my performance to the winning percentage of the team. That's a statistic we keep nowadays. So you're wrong. You're crazy, but convince the person who found the common enemy. Convince the people who found the easy story. The simple story is the one that we believe. The simple story is the one that we believe. The complex story, the one that requires thinking and taking the story apart and trying to figure out the answer, that story doesn't necessarily get believed. The easy story is the one that we believe. So this has brought itself, and that's how we would do it. That's exactly how that's how you make a political party. So here you had this woman, Kamala Harris, making she's a really good debater. I watched her; she was excellent, and I was very impressed actually because 8 years ago she couldn't talk. So I was definitely impressed. She had made major progress. She knows how to debate literally the way you learn in university, the way I did. But I'm also unfortunately like I'm triangular to these two positions. I can rip on her and the other guy all day long without a problem. But but it's really easy to make her look totally insane. I can do it in 5 minutes. I can have you convinced that she's like the most evil person in the world. And I can have you convinced in 5 minutes that Trump is the most evil person in the world. And and it doesn't matter almost what you think now. I can I can pull it apart, and show you by creating a bigger common enemy. Okay, a bigger common enemy, a bigger common enemy. So this is how it's sort of evolved, and so now today we are more polarized. We've never been this polarized, and I come over here, I get in the Uber, and the guy's like, "Hey, Trump won your election. How you feeling about that?" And I said, "Well, how are you feeling about it?" And the guy's like, he says, we like Trump." And I'm like, "Cool." I go, "Good for you." I go, "Good for you. You guys are happy then." Next Uber you get into, it's like, "Hey, everybody's talking the election that day, right?" I didn't even think about it. Like, it didn't even dawn on me that today was election day because I'm out of the country. And another person say, "Yeah, I wanted Harris to win because I thought she was smart," and I was like, "Oh, well, she clearly was smart. She was a prosecuting attorney, so yeah, totally logical and rational." And she missed, and she didn't even get the popular vote this time. So it was pretty much Trump got the popular vote, shockingly, actually. Although I think I told you that a year ago that I put money down on Trump to get the popular vote. Why? Because it's much easier to get enemies, to create enemies, than it is to talk logic and intelligence to people. Okay? So it's like Kamala Harris is not going to sit there and rip on people who are innocent. She rips on people she thinks are guilty. That's her job. She's a prosecuting attorney, right? Now, you don't have to like her. You can hate her. I couldn't care less. But she's going to pick on people that she believes are guilty. And when you do that, she's trying to be good at what she does. Trump, meanwhile, is doing what he knows he's good at, which is pointing to a common enemy and say, "Look, that's the problem. That's the problem." You can point to the border, you can point to Cleveland or the Ohio, you can point anywhere you want, and there's a bunch of stuff going on that's somebody's fault about something. And Trump is brilliant at this strategy. And the man won the popular vote. And I had a hunch about this back in January, and I took the odds. The odds are actually in my favor. I got paid more than even money on this. And but as you look at history for the last 30 years, no Republican wins the popular vote ever. It's almost impossible because to win the Republican popular vote is really tough. There's far more people who need social programs and things like that, or want social programs, or believe they have entitled to them. Take your pick, or take all three, and much fewer people that are conservatives that say, "No, we don't want social programs. People should work for a living and get paid what they deserve." So the odds that Trump would win the popular vote in our country, for you guys who don't listen to this, to understand it, it's like we have what's called an electoral college. Every state has a certain number of votes that they're allocated, and then the person who has the most votes from the states, and it adds up to about 500. And out of that 500 total votes, that's all it really is, by the way, guys. That's your president. But I keep track of how many people, like Trump lost the popular vote by 7 million votes 4 years ago. 4 years ago. That's a whole bunch of votes to lose an election and like get his butt kicked. But he made more enemies. He made I don't mean he made enemies. I mean, he created more enemies this year. He was brilliant at it. He would just find enemy after enemy we can create, and I'm not going to even name the names. You can just think about them yourself and put them in your head. Who did Trump tell us to hate this year? Who did he say his fault? I have a very strong connection to the Ukraine, many friends in Ukraine. I have many, many, many friends in Russia. I don't want to see them fighting each other because these are people who have been to my seminars on both sides who have come up and said, Kev, can I have your autograph, right? And now they're killing each other, right? I don't like that, you know? So for me, it's very hard to watch this because I really get what's going on and how enemies are made, But I will tell you that I did do propaganda work with one of the countries this year. So I'll tell you that, okay, to try to help and aid what I thought was the right thing to do for the war effort to save people's lives and so forth.
Wow, man. I wasn't ready to hear that, but I'm not surprised, man. I'll tell you this much. If I wanted somebody on my team to help with influence, it would definitely be Dr. Kevin Hogan.
Right. This is I'm going to give you an example. That's one that that I've been close friends to Richard Brody, the inventor of Microsoft Word, for years, right? I think you know that. I think you know that. And Richard is also the person who invented the term meme, a meme, okay? And we would sit and talk about this concept, meme. And he and Richard Dawkins, between the two of them, they developed this idea of what a meme is. And a meme is an idea that bounces from one mind to the other, totally unaware, totally unconscious. It's not on purpose. It just this person catches it and it goes here and then it bounces out. So last week in Boston, an almost impossible event happened at the airport at Logan. There was a plane coming and it was landing and it landed and it's on the tarmac and then it hits another plane. Do you know what the odds of an airplane hitting another plane while you're going, 30 miles or 50 miles an hour or 60? It's almost impossible. Now, here's what's weird. That's the first time that's happened this year. Okay, first time out of tens of thousands of landings. 3 hours later, another plane lands and hits another plane in Logan and hits it. And do you know what the odds on that happening? They're the same. Multiply the two. Say it's 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100 million. Those are the odds of that happening. In other words, it can't happen. But because of memetics, it does happen because we tend to replicate the thoughts. Like there's a captain in the sky, and it's not a fault issue. It's just this is how our brains work. We saw that, we heard about it on the intercom. Yeah, there was just a accident on the runway. One plane hit another runway, and so be careful going in. Be careful going in. Okay, so it's like you're just begging for trouble now. But they hit each other, and so it happened twice in one day, and yet in the entire United States, it's not happened all year anywhere. That's a meme. So when you look at the movie theater, that's a meme. Like somebody.
Isn't that just weird?
Memes are fascinating, and the whole idea that you and I could talk about something today, and somebody would act on it in some way that we may or may not expect. Okay, we may or may not expect it, but I've had people do things like I say something and go and do some amazing charitable act, which is a really cool thing, and then they'll give a lot of money. It's like, I didn't say to go do that. They're like, no, but you did it and I wanted to do it too. This happens with regularity, but I'm pretty careful about what I talk about in public. But the idea of a Family Guy seeing that kind of a thing, a show like that, by an audience like that, because there's certain audiences that are more inclined to commit violence when they see it than others. There's certain people that are more likely to hate a group of people for some reason or for no reason than another group. And so when you see stuff like that, here's the point. It doesn't matter what the scenario was there. I don't care. What matters going forward is that when you see something on television like that, or on cable, or on Netflix or whatever, and you see some weird thing happening that's very specific, marathon, people getting hurt, blah blah blah, falling all over each other, when you see something specific that goes into my brain, and I live close enough to go make something like that happen, so do 50,000 other people, but 20 of us are actually like not quite put together well enough mentally. So that's how a meme works, and that's actually those are beautiful examples of memes. And if people understand how memes work, they'll see how hate works, and they'll see. By the way, it also works the other way, not as powerfully, but love and good things, and people being good to people, and all that. It it works too, and we'll talk about that in Contagion. Let's go to the next slide. What else do we got here?
Yeah. Oh, and one thing I wanted to talk to you about is Darren Brown. You've heard of Darren Brown, right?
Oh yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah, good magician. Good.
He talked like you are one of the best people out there when it comes to conversational hypnosis. Absolutely. And I think at least what he showed up, he would go into like can you hit mute while we're talking?
Sure, hang on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. He would go into there was this one time he went into a jewelry store, and he walks into the jewelry store and he's like, "Oh, hey, can I see that jewelry?" And the guy shows him the jewelry, and he starts asking him a bunch of questions, and he gets them all confused. And then he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll take that." And so he basically like gives him fake money or no money at all, but the guy's so confused, he takes it and he gives him real money back. And then so Darren walks out of the jewelry shop, and the guy that is behind the counter starts like what the hell just happened? And he realizes that he just got duped. And so he goes outside after Darren, and Darren's like, "Oh yeah, here I am." And he gives him his money back. But it's amazing when he would take other tactics. And the reason I'm talking about this is you brought up hypnosis, and I love hypnosis. I'm fascinated with hypnosis. But let's talk about hypnosis and the supernatural for a minute. Not necessarily super abilities. He could take somebody and hypnotize them, and then that person could like read other person's thoughts and see behind walls and do all this stuff that you don't typically have the ability to do unless you get into that real deep state. Your thoughts?
So Darren Brown is an excellent mentalist. He's an excellent magician, and I've watched a lot of his work, and because this is part of my background, and I know how a lot of all of this works, because it's just part of the things that I'm interested in. I love cold reading. I love the ability to tell people what they're thinking, and I can tell almost anyone what they're thinking. I did this last week in Indonesia. I was in Indonesia, in Bali, and I told people, every single person, I would look at each person in the audience and I said, "You are experiencing a substantial amount of pain right now that you haven't had in the past, and it's causing more frustration for you now than it ever has. Does that sound right to you?" That's what I thought. "You, sir, you're overwhelmed. You've been overwhelmed in a way that you don't like, and it's making you uncomfortable, and you're actually just glad to be here, even though it's going to cause you more time and more work when you get home. Does that sound right?" "Yeah." "It does." "Wow." And people are freaking out, right? There's a girl over here. And I said, you are sort of concerned about where money is going to be coming from next year. Not that you need the money necessarily, you're not terrified, but you really don't know if it's going to be coming from the same space or not. Like, are you going to be getting it from the same customer base or whatever it is? Like, I don't really see it. But does that sound? And she's like, and I like, "Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. And I sense a challenge with a relationship, a very close relationship, or at least one that you wish was a close relationship." And the person starts like this, right? And I said, "That's what I thought." And then I go over here and I said, well, I'll show you on the next slide. Actually, go to the next slide, because I actually have some of these listed up. I put some of them in here for your readers. Go down to the next one down. There you go. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we go to person number 5 over here, middle on the back on the left. This is an exclusive event for wealthy people who own businesses, okay? And these people have massive stresses. And I said, you are pondering a major issue right now, a major problem. I go and I said, I'm not going to say what it is because it's very personal and very relevant to your business and your family, or maybe somebody that you love. I'm not sure, but you know that what you've been thinking about doing, even though you can't pull the trigger, it really is the right thing to do. He's like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Pretty sure, pretty sure." And then there was a woman sitting in front of him, and I said, "You know, you've been looking in the mirror a little bit more lately than you have in the last 5 years." I go, "I think you look great, but you don't think you look great." And I know this is hard to say in front of an audience, but the truth is that you've been looking in front of the mirror and you're actually concerned about your physical appearance. I go, I don't know how long that's been getting worse, or we've been thinking about it more, but it's bugging you. I go, does that sound right? And she said, like this. And then go to the guy next to Muslim gentleman from center of Indonesia by Jakarta, and I said, you you work for that pipe company, and you would think that you make all this money and all that, and you do. And then when you do, you start to sit there and think, but now I've been thinking about buying a new, and I said, it's not a house. It's far more likely to be a car, and probably something actually that's kind of nice. I go, I actually don't know anything about cars, so I can't tell you what kind of a car it is. But he's like this, and he's going like this. He's like, yeah. He says, I have. And I said, what kind of a car? And he says, you wouldn't know it if I told it to you because you don't have them in the United States. That's what he told me. Go to the next slide because I think I put one more from this event in there. Oh, yes, there was. There was a guy on the left, all the way to the left in my front or second row, I can't remember. And I said, you're like the person on the other side of the room over there. You've been working harder than you've ever worked in your life for the same result, and it's starting to bug you. And it's bugging the people around you too. Not that you're not getting a better result, but that your attitude and your frustration level is so high that you're starting to respond to them in a negative way, and they're frustrated about it. And he's like, how do you know that? And so I stopped there. I did 10. And I was like, okay. I go, so what you just did, we can do with any audience on planet Earth. It's just that simple. And
well, you're taking like everybody has these events, right? Like, of course, like the older you get, the more you're looking in the mirror, the more you're concerned about. I don't know, man. I like that. But the thing is, you got to still know how to pick the right person for that specific. Like you still got to have a little bit of intuition there, right? Or is this all just textbook?
not quite textbook. It's really close to textbook, maybe 70%. Okay, so you can generally know that women are more attentive to their physical beauty and appearance than men. You can know that men are usually more, well, women and men are both really equally concerned about where their money is going to come from. If a woman is extremely attractive, she's not that concerned about where it's coming from, but well, it's more really that she's not worried about having money. The question really is, where will it be coming from? Okay. And so it could be that could imply that she's going to be with somebody who would have the access to the money, or it could be that she would be able to utilize her appearance to get more appointments and things like that and talk to people. Okay. So there is art here. There's art for sure in how you handle your communication. Because all this communication started with Darren Brown. And when you watch Darren, he's essentially the best cold reader I think in the world. In other words, he's able to talk to people, and as far as confusion is concerned, he's really good. I can tell you a simple story. I think I've actually told you this one before, where when I trained NLP, neuro linguistic programming, back in the mid '90s, and Dr. Will Horton was my partner, and we were arguing the extent of the power of what NLP could do. And he's saying, Kev, he says, you can't do that. Like, and I said, here's the deal. I can get the guy. We were in line at Denny's because we finished at midnight. Okay. We trained from 7 a.m. until midnight, just like any good cult. We keep people up all night long. We don't feed them in the daytime, and we go to Denny's. So, so, so I said, here's the deal. That guy is going to give me 2 20s for a 10. And he says, I can't say what he said, but he says, golly, Kev, that's not likely to happen, in his own way. And so I said, so I'm paying my bill, I'm paying in cash. And I said, by the way, here's a 10. Do me a favor, can I have 2 20s for that? I really am short on change. And he's like, yeah, sure, man, no problem. And he gave me 2 20s, and the gentleman was a African American, and he had these really big eyes with, just dark coconut. I mean, I'm just huge eyes. And I said, don't worry, man, I'm giving it back, because he saw what just happened. But the kid, who was 20, 18, something like that, he didn't have a clue what happened, because I was just talking to him about paying my bill, at which time I then added another 20 in there, a 10 in there, and I got my 2 20s back. And then at the end, I said, how did I get these 2 20s? He says, I gave you a change for a. And I said, look, how about you give me my 10 back, and here's your 2 20s. And the manager. And
the manager, what? You muted yourself.
The manager was very happy that I gave the money back.
He's probably having a meeting later, like how not to get duped.
But isn't that a great lesson, though? Because when you give people two things to think about, they can't. They don't have that skill level.
Yeah. So I had a little stint where I sold timeshare for a little while, and that's when I really got into your work. And people called me mind freak at work because I was doing all these like mind tricks and stuff like that. I was, this was quite a while ago, but I remember I tried the confusion technique with people. They would come in and I'd be like, oh, hey, how you doing? All right, right on. Yeah, okay, so we're going to go to this presentation, and then all right, over there, I'll have you sit over there. And then over there, I've got, you can get a drink. We can get you a drink. Okay, great. I'll get you a drink. And then you're going to buy a premier presentation at the end of this. And I'm just getting, and anyway, I was just having so much fun with it for a while, and I was doing really good at it. And I was like the top guy in sales there for a while. But then I started feeling guilty about it. And then I started and then I started wondering, like, if it was just me being excited that was getting people to buy, or if it was like because I was doing the confusion tactics at the beginning and be like, oh yeah, you'll buy the premier package at the end of this presentation. Oh, here's a soda pop for you. Oh, I see right there. Like, anyway, it was probably a combination, but it was fun, man. I got one guy to give me his wallet and his cell phone once, and then just as a joke, and I gave it back to him. But yeah, anyway. So I'm weird, man. I just like to have fun. I'm like, all these other guys are way too uptight. I'm like, loosen up a little bit. You're getting a free presentation. That doesn't work.
The thing about you is that, well, you and I both have ADHD, okay? And you just happen to be just a little better at it than I am. And there's nothing wrong with having ADHD. Some of the most talented, amazing people of all time are ADHD. And when a person has ADHD, they tend to be a good storyteller because they'll start a story here, then they'll skip it over to here, and then they'll go back and they'll have this one, and then by the end they'll wrap them all up, and it's like, wow, I felt like I just watched a movie.
a scary movie combined with a little bit of science fiction. But anyway, yes, enough about the confusion techniques. I just think it's fun, man. People are cool. People are pretty cool.
No doubt.
Oh, what are we looking at? Oh, what's this, Kevin?
Exactly. Now, what were we talking about before?
A hot blonde you're hanging out with right there. You look like you're totally in your element.
That's Jessie Jane. I always had a crush on her when I was a kid. Well, she was a kid too, but I mean, when I was younger, before I was 34. But I was like, I want to meet her. It was like, and so I asked her agent, and I said, can you put her together with me for lunch? I'm going to be in Vegas. And he says, well, I don't know about lunch during the show, the convention, but he says, you're welcome to, she'd be happy to talk to you for 15 minutes and just, shoot the, and I was like, well, do that. Let's do that. And so I got a chance to hang out with her, and it was really fun, and it was just super cool. And by the way, now we don't remember what we were talking about 5, 10, 15 minutes ago. Why? Because we just changed the color of the package. It's like we just completely switched everything. I had an all text presentation, and now you see one of the prettiest girls ever, right? Oh yeah, we were in psychic, right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so so anyway,
What slide are we on? I'm sorry, I got this.
Keep going. No, keep going. Go down. Let's see here. What do we got here? Look, stop here for a second. Oh, here's some beauty. And so one of the things I wanted to do when we were talking about MK Ultra, I'm like, you can use tools that they were taught to use, but they were taught to use these things through torture and all that. But you don't even need it, because you can just imagine that. Imagine that you're in a bar. You're in a bar, and imagine that you've got your phone out, and you're thinking about buying a suit, or so you think you're going to tell this girl sitting next to you that you're going to buy a suit. And just say that you're sitting next to her at the bar, and you say, I got a question for you. Can I get your advice on something? Who doesn't like to give advice, by the way? Okay. So you say, look, this suit or this suit. I'm thinking about getting one next week because I did okay this year, and I want to do better next year. Which one's going to work? And then I go, can I just hand it to you? And you hand her your cell phone. It's like, and she'll go, this one right here. How come? Well, because do you see how this is working now?
Yeah,
Right?
brilliant.
All right. Right. So it's like, how come? Well, because you're too white. You look like you're from the North Pole, man. And so if you get brown on that skin, man, it's going to look like you're going to look weird. But the light blue with the gray or the off shades, she says you'll look good in that. I said, are you sure? Are you sure? Yeah, no, yeah, it's totally fine. It's like, okay, thank you. I really appreciate. Can I buy you a drink? I go, what are you drinking? Oh, I'm not just iced tea. I said, meh, me too. Here, let's get some bartender, iced tea, iced tea. I go, let's see if it's any good. Sometimes they serve terrible iced tea here. You like? Yeah, me too. It's pretty good. And so by teaching people the basic, that's a really simple pattern. But it takes a long time to learn if you don't know why these things work. But basically, each step is a logical step in a sequence that's just impossible to walk away from. At what point is the girl going to go, no, I'm not going to, especially because you're showing her nice coats, right? You're at a bar and you're wearing this coat and you already look good, right? And so now you've got this choice and you're asking for her advice, not her opinion, which is nice, her advice. She thinks in her brain all day long, why don't people ask me? Why don't people check with me on this? I see it. They don't see it. God. And of course, here's Kev, who's like, I'm not that smart. And so would you be willing to help me out? Like, what? Right? And so you're following through a set of sequence. So you guys should watch that whole piece over again and write it down word for word because it's pretty gorgeous.
No, that's great. I was reading through the Pagosa Springs message boards the other day, and this one person left a post about, "Hey, I need your advice about a new podcast name," and they got tons of response. And I thought to myself, "Oh, that's brilliant! Yeah, ask for somebody's advice. What a great way to start a conversation with somebody!" And very easy 4-step program. You just have to follow the 4 steps correctly, and you got to have confidence at the same time too. I like, could I have your advice on this versus like, hey, can I get your advice on this? So I got a friend right now that's trying to get interviews with people because he started a podcast, and he's gotten ghosted by a couple of people where they just didn't even show up. And I was like, I think he's just presenting it like, you know, like offering them too much. So it's like too good to be true versus like, if anybody's ever had a cat, like I'm not much of a cat person, but cats are like, you know, if you want to pet a cat, they have to want you to pet them, because if you want to go pet the cat, they're going to go run away. So you got to use that reverse psychology. And I think that you're really good at that. But I think that that's one of the most valuable tools actually is reverse psychology. Would you agree with that, or is that outdated? Kevin, are you there?
I'm supposed to follow directions and hit the unmute button. I don't know. I don't follow direction well. So anyway, so first the answer to the question is that reverse psychology, so to speak, right? In other words, don't do it if you don't want to. No, I can do it, right? Okay. But the way I used to use it when I was a kid, and that's a great example, is I was on the top bunk of 3 bunks when I was a kid. All right. My brother's below me. And I'd want the bed off. I want the light off. I don't like light. I want the light off. I'm in bed. I'm going to bed. And so I'd say, Fred, if you frickin' turn that light off, I will frickin' kill you. Click. And I get mad. I go, you son of a good night. Reverse psychology can really pay, really pay. Even when people say, I know what you're doing, you're just trying to do reverse psychology on me, aren't you? I'm saying, you know, you might be right, but how would you know if you were wrong?
I like
that just stops their brain. It freezes it right there. It's just gorgeous. And so that's why I can afford to do these podcasts and give you guys some of my favorite techniques, because I'm giving you the technique, but there's also 20 sub pieces of each one of these where if you learn the nuances, you actually become kind of up a level where you walk up to the I told you the story about the immigration officer, right? And how, oh, I don't think I told you about it. I told you or no?
Well,
so the immigration, I'm going into Bali immigration, and we might have talked about this before we started recording, and and uh, and so my girlfriend is going through her line, which is one passport country, and I'm going through another line, and the guy says to me, he says, "So why are you why are you coming to Bali?" I says, "I'm coming for pleasure, but I do have a gig on Wednesday." And so aside, he says, "You got a gig? What's that?" I said, "I'm speaking before an audience at the Westin for them." And he says, "Let me have your passport." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, no." He says, "You can't be here for business." I said, "I'm not here for business." I said, "I'm here to give a gig. Okay, I'm here to speak, and I'll be speaking all day long because I promised them I would, and they've been very good to me." So that's how it works. And by the way, here's who I am. And I grab my cell phone, I open it, I flip it to kevinhogan.com. I said, "Do you see that?" And there's a picture of me at the top of the page with a microphone. I said, "That's what I do." Now, here's the deal. You're welcome to have the immigration or the visa or the passport all night long. You're welcome to detain me. I don't care. I really don't. I'm fine. It's been a 17-hour flight. I'm good to go. So, whatever you want to do is cool. But here's the deal. The Westin's going to be torqued. They're going to be very upset. I've got people coming from Jakarta flying into Bali here. And I also have, my girlfriend is on the other flight, and she's in the other line, and she's there going to be helping me on this thing. So whatever you want to do is okay with me, but I'd really appreciate my passport, And he's like, "Get out of here." And so, and that, by the way, is 17 there, right here. Ask for a little something, and then ask for a lot. You can ask for a little thing, like his attention, like, would you look at this? And then you can ask for your passport back. Okay. So you're asking for something small, and then you can ask for something bigger. Also, by the way, most people don't know this. If you do something nice for somebody, it's way more likely that when they ask you to do the big favor, that you'll do the big favor. So if I do something really nice for Rex, say that I signed some books and given to his mom for Christmas. Okay.
Which he did,
All
by
right.
the way. And my parents love you. So thank you. And you sent me a really cool t-shirt, and that was awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So yeah, so now here's the deal. The probability now of, if Rex asks me for anything, the probability now that I've actually like made a gift which just was free. I mean, like, what can Kevin do today that would be really cool and make somebody's day? It's like, now if you ask me for some stupid, ridiculous, large thing, like, Kev, could I borrow 50 grand? I'd be like, oh man, I don't want to loan 50 grand. It's a lot of cash. And it's like, fine, whatever, write a check. Yeah, there you go. And that's how you get the bigger result, is to ask, or to give, to either ask or give the small favor, the small gift first. Favors or gifts. One way you're asking, one way you're giving, it doesn't matter, because when it comes to the second thing, when you ask for the favor, you're going to get it with either situation. Where you don't get the favor is where you don't want to help the other person first.
Right. Like, that's a good human nature thing right there. Just like, be kind, humankind. Hence the name humankind. I like that. That's cool.
Number 18 down here, ask for time. One of the greatest ways to get people to give you money is to ask them for time first. So if I say, Rex, I'm painting my house to sell it now that we've sold the house, right? So I'm painting my house, I got to sell it. And would it be cool if you flew in just for a few days, stay out, hang out, we'll drink at night, we'll let you smoke your whatever you smoke nowadays, whatever you gummies you got. Sure it is. So, so, so anyway, and then and you're like, painting sucks. Painting is not organic. Painting is deadly. That stuff will get in your lungs and rip you apart. So, and I'll say, wait, you know what? Better. How about if I just ask you for a favor, make a donation at Christmas time to my favorite charity, which is, and I give you the name of my favorite charity, and you're like, no problem, dude, be happy to help you. Because I asked for money, I asked for time first, and then.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, these are like and so, how do I put it? Like archetypal. This is primordial stuff, man. Like the basic genetics. Whoever created us embedded these little cheat codes, and I think that's so cool. But they're all win-win. You know what I mean? These are all win-win kind of things. So if you're gonna use persuasion tactics, use persuasion tactics the right way. What's the word I'm looking for here? Wisely. Use wisely. Those with great power have great responsibility, Kevin.
Authentic and ethics. It's like, yeah, use rules. It's like you really can get pretty much anything you want. Zig Ziglar, there was an old, one of my early heroes in my life was Zig Ziglar, and he said, you can get pretty much anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, me too, man. That's fantastic. Let's see here. Where am I at? I'm still wanting to go to the hot blonde, but let me go to the next one here. Is this where we're at? Persuasion tech cool, persuasion genius. Yes. I think so. No. You got to ask the question 3 to 7 times. Eventually, you get the truth right.
He thought I was muted, but I wasn't, guys. It was his mistake. So So,
It usually is.
So number 19 here is a gift. I debated putting this in. I usually only train this for high level execs that are paying me a chunk of cash. This is pretty cool. It's going to take a minute. So if you want to grab a pen and paper, this is the time to do it. Trust me, it'll pay off a million times over. So if you want, when you want to really find out what matters to someone in a relationship, in asking them out for a date, in getting the job, in getting the approval, in getting the yes, in getting the anything you want. Here's how most people do it. They say, what's most important to you in life? Oh, well, God. Okay, cool. And what's most important to you? What else is most important to you in life? Oh, my wife. What else is most important to you? Oh, my kids. What else is most important to you? And being a good person. And what else is most important to you? Well, just helping my friends out. Cool. No, I stopped. The person didn't give me the right answer yet. They haven't given it. This happens with every single person in the world. So I've done values. This is called the values elicitation. I asked you what was most important. Okay. And the person told me, they told me 6 things. And of all these 6 things, they're all nice. It takes me back to 2020 when I was writing Irresistible Attraction. Mary Lee LeBay and I were interviewing women, and we wanted to know why women didn't have the husband that they want. And so the first question I would ask a girl is I would say, so what's most important to you in a guy? And she'd say, oh, he's got to be a nice guy. I'd say a nice guy, cool. And then I'd say, and we had a list. We had to give the same questions to every single person. So, because we're doing a research project. So, and the next question and I'd say and what's the next most important thing to you? Oh, he's got to be good with kids. And I'm like, okay, good, got to be good with kids. That's cool. And what else is important to you? Well, he's got to be able to provide for his family. It's an important thing. I can totally see that. And what else is important to you? My friends have to like him. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And what else is important to you? And she'd say, well, he's got to be nice to me, like good to me. And I'd say, okay, he's got to be good to you. And are you currently in a relationship now? Yes, I am. Okay, cool. So I said, then we would ask, the very last thing we'd ask would be, so of these things that were important to you in choosing a man, and you chose this current man that you're with, how many of these things does he have? And not one woman out of 40 said even one. That's pretty interesting. So in other words, we asked all 40 women, how many of these characteristics does this man have? Not one had even one characteristic. All right. So this is pretty important. So don't just think because you ask somebody and they give you an answer that they've told you the truth. Okay. Or that they have told you something that is maybe not a lie, but it's what they believe to be true. And I'd say, so let's look at this a different way. If there was something else you could ask for in a man, what would it be? I'd like somebody who's good looking. Now, all of a sudden, my little green light goes off. Okay. And I go, oh, I mean, in my mind, right? Like, I believe that. Okay. So I would write that down. And I'd say, what else is really important? Well, he's got to be able to have a secure job and stable and, long term evidence that he can actually take care of a family long term. I'm like, I like that. That makes sense. What else? What else is really, really, really important to you? What can't you live without? Oh, I can't live without a guy who doesn't bitch at me every single day. Oh, you don't want somebody who yells at you. Okay, cool. Okay, let me write that down. Okay, and then what about the what else can't you live without? What else can you just not live without? Well, I can't live without sex. Ah, sex. Now I'm starting to believe it completely. So I write down sex. Okay, and by the way, I haven't heard one thing, and I'm just really curious. Can you help me? Does intelligence matter at all? Oh, yeah, he's got to be intelligent or I don't want to be with him. Now, I always put a note, Kay suggested this, right? Because it doesn't come up. So then I say, now what I do is now I have a list of what I consider 5 real things. Okay. She wants intelligence. She wants to have a good sexual relationship. She wants to have a good looking guy. She wants to have a guy that's a good provider for the family. These are the things people really want. Okay. And then I asked her, every girl, how many of these 5 things do you have in your relationship? And they would all say, well, I got 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5. I have them all actually. 2 out of 5. Now this is really interesting because people think they want this, and then when you start all over again, and they told you what they think is the truth, they think these things were true. And of course, I'm not saying they're not true. I simply say they're not the answers. I know they're not the answers because I've done this hundreds, thousands of times, and I know exactly how it plays out. And the way that I usually do it in a classroom setting or in an event setting is I'll say, I want you to write down the 5 things you can't live without in life. And we did this with my buddy Scott Bell. I'm going to tease him here for a second because he'll watch this. And at our last Las Vegas event that we did, I said, Scott, I go, what is it that you just can't live without in a girl? And he says, oh, I can't live without a smart girl. And I wrote down smart girl. Okay. And I said, what else can't you live without? He says, well, she's got to like accept the entrepreneurial life. Like my schedule is like yours, where it's like you're always up, always working, you know. And I said, that's really important. That's good. So I wrote that down. And I said, what else can't you live without? I need somebody who's willing to help me, you know, like on projects, because I can't do it all myself. It's like, that's really good. And I wrote that down. And then I said, what else can't you live without? Because he still hasn't said the truth, and the truth has got to come soon, you know. And he says,
right?
well, yeah, come on, like let's get to it. So you know,
trying to be the good boy, but yeah, all right, I get it.
So now I read back. So now I have my list, which I just wrote down, and I say, okay, so you couldn't live without somebody who's willing to accept the entrepreneurial lifestyle, somebody who's willing to do whatever, all those other things I said was, and then sex, right? And I said, now, here's the thing. Here's what's most important. What is the absolute one thing on this list that if you didn't have it, you would be devastated if you didn't have it for the rest of your life? Sex. Okay, it took me an hour to get to sex. Okay, an hour. So when people do these values elicitations with people at the office, they'll do like a disc inventory, which is going to give them all of their characteristics and psychological personality traits. Total garbage. It's ridiculous. All you're doing, it's like doing the Myers-Briggs test. It's like, do you find yourself comfortable in crowds? No. And then you look to see what you are, introvert. Come on, no kidding.
That's a shocker. Uh-oh.
So anyway, so
I was like, what? Where'd Kevin go?
So,
yeah. Sorry.
So we ask the question a few times. Eventually, they give you the true answer. If you go through and just do it enough times, and you really learn about the person, you learn what their surface world is, what they see in their surface world that they wish they had, or maybe even that they believe it, but I doubt it. But what they had, and then but as you get closer and closer and closer, it becomes more personal and painful if they don't have it. This is what I really want to know. And as soon as I know this stuff on the inside, now the last 5 things we talked about, now this person is mine. I own their brain, and I know exactly what it needs to run. And so I can give them those things. I can find those things for them. So like, what's most important to you about a car? Oh, it's got to get good gas mileage. Okay, really? Okay, cool. I'll write down good gas mileage. What else is important to you about a car? It's got to be safe for my kids. Okay, safe for my kids. All right. I'm sure that matters. Okay, so, and what else is really important to you? Oh, it has to be, like, rated high in Consumer Reports. Let me write that down. High in, blah, blah, blah. And then, and of course, I know nothing about cars. So, and I say, okay, so if you had to have something you couldn't live without in a car, what would it be? Well, it would have to be something that really looked good so I wouldn't look stupid in the neighborhood driving junk. Oh, a real answer.
The ego, man. I'll tell you, the ego can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. But when people give the ego such a bad time, it's like we are that way because I don't know. I guess I think it can be a good or a bad. It can also protect us sometimes, but yeah,
Tons.
yeah.
Interesting, huh? So let's go down. We'll go down to 20. Where are we at there? 20, yeah. Oh, we can go to the first search story. That's fine. 22 is good. I like 22. So I like 20 also. So resentment is the foundation for most great stories. So you and me have been working on a project for a while this year, and it's a streaming series. And people always think that the most important thing in a story is action or great relationships or all of that. And those are all important things. But really, every great movie, every great book is really built around resentment. Resentment. If you think back to Star Wars, did you watch Star Wars?
Dude, yeah, hello.
Okay. Okay.
The
So
original Star Wars.
Star Wars is pretty important because at the beginning of Star Wars, when you ask people, so what mattered to Luke in Star Wars? Why did he do what he did? There's only two reasons he did. Was he doing everything to save the planet from the Death Star? No, not at all. He got home from working one day and the Empire had destroyed his aunt and uncle. They killed them. They killed them, and they burned the family house down. And then he goes to Obi-Wan Kenobi's house, finds R2-D2, and R2 has a message. Obi-Wan, please help me. Please help me. Thank you, Obi-Wan, like that, right? And and so he's doing it for two reasons. He's going to go and rescue the princess, and he's going to get revenge for what the Empire did to his family. Not because somewhere out there, 17 billion light years from here, there's this Death Star that's going to blow up another planet. No, he's going to do it for the girl, and he's going to do it for resentment. He's mad. He's disgusted that they did this, and he's going to get revenge. And that's why we really do things. So, why does this matter to you? When you tell a story, when you're trying to be persuasive and not boring, okay, and you're at the bar or at the restaurant or at church or wherever you're going, you want to make sure that you tell a story and think, where is the resentment in this story? Where's the resentment? Okay. In the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, it's Christmas time, back home where you guys probably are starting to get snow and cool weather and all that kind of stuff. It's like Jimmy Stewart wanted to get out of town. He wanted in It's a Wonderful Life. He wanted to get out of town. He was sick of being at the building and loan. He didn't want to work counting pennies anymore for the rest of his life. He was getting tired. It was starting to piss him off. His brother goes to war. His brother gets medals. His brother comes back from World War II. His brother comes back and gets all the accolades. And then the whole story is built around his resentment and his frustration that he doesn't have the life that he wants, and he just is sick of it, and he's going to jump off the bridge. And wouldn't you know it, the damn angel jumps in before him, and he's got to go rescue the angel. Just torqued him off, throws the jacket off, goes, rescues the angel, and that's what that core scene right there, it just goes to show you, he didn't want to kill himself. But the story was built on the resentment that he couldn't get out of town. But his brother, who had seen the world, plus he fought in World War II, got decorated, appreciated for all this stuff. Resentment is what runs the world. You ever see a movie called The War of the Worlds? Tom Cruise?
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Cool. It's it's not the best. It's not the best sci-fi, but it's got a great start. And what I loved about the start about this movie, and if you think about it, when you're talking to your friends, family, business people, it's like, how does the movie start out? Basically, the movie starts out with the son and the dad playing catch in the backyard. And they don't like each other all that much. They're playing catch and they're throwing the ball back and forth and back and forth. And then at one point, Tom Cruise gets so pissed off at his son, he throws the ball really hard, breaks the window. The glass breaks. Nobody remembers this. Okay. Nobody remembers this. But Cruise is resentful because his kids live with his ex-wife, okay, who is now pregnant with another guy's baby, right? So he's just so angry and resentful and hateful about all this kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, and the kids are with him and they're running away from the tripods, it's like all of a sudden that resentment turns into love, and it's like that's the great twist in a story. It's like it goes from I just am mad at my kids and I'm mad at my ex-wife and I'm mad at everybody. I'm just sick of all of it. I don't like these tripods. I'm sick of everything. And then all of a sudden he flips it. Then all of a sudden they start taking prisoners and he's like, wait a second, where's my kids? Where's my kids? Where's my kids? And that's when you're telling a story. Those are the kind of stories we want to listen to. Not the I almost died in Cebu Airlines coming across the Pacific this year when I came to the Philippines, right? Nobody cares. We all had that experience 55 times, right? Resentment is what really matters.
That's a lot of times to almost die on the way on the airplane. That's
It is.
so
Let's go to the next page. Go to the next page here. Yeah, first heard story. Take a little more control of your life, guys. If you want people to like you, if you want people to go out with you, if you want people to hire you, make sure that the very first thing they hear about you is a really good story. So people should hear a story that goes like this. And you're going to ask me this question in a second, by the way. The question is, well, how do I control what story people hear about me first? Post it first. Put it up online first. Put it in social media first. Make sure people read the very first thing about you. Because if they read the second thing, if they say, I saw Kevin Hogan on Rex Bear's Leak Project the other day, and it was actually pretty cool. It was kind of interesting. I mean, it was a little complicated and weird at times, but that was pretty good stuff. Okay. Now, if somebody after that posts, if somebody after that posts, that Kevin Hogan, he can be all over the board. He's all over the board sometimes. You don't know where he's going, and you don't even know if he got there, and or something like that. And so that's the first heard story. And so they filter every single other thing they hear about you through that. So you control the first heard story. We know that reviews at Amazon, when they get a 5-star review, first review, it's likely to be reviewed again later that day. If a person gets 2 stars or less, it's likely that it won't be reviewed again for at least 3 weeks. That's pretty amazing. So everybody should have a cluster of friends who are willing to go in there and just say, hey, do me a favor, man, and say the truth about this product. Say I gave you a copy of my product, my book, my whatever, and so you're just testing it, and this is what my opinion was. I do know Kevin Hogan, but this is what my opinion was. It could have been a little better edited, but you know what? I learned a ton. That's how people hear the first heard story about you.
Well, the reason it gets a little weird sometimes, discombobulated, is because I'm interviewing you, obviously. So they know that. They're like, yeah. So I don't think it's as scattered when you actually talk to other people. That would be my fault, but that's what happens. So that's why they keep coming back, man, because they just like that form of confusion. It's like truth and confusion. Yeah, that's it. teach them something new they want to know. Dopamine rush. I like dopamine rushes, and I think that the dopamine. So number 23, people that go from mainstream to conspiracy news, it's because they want that dopamine rush, and then they get hooked on like mute for on your side, please. It's just thank you. The audio was coming in terribly. So when I went, there's a website out there called godlikeproductions.com. And I got hooked on that website like 12 years ago, approximately. And it got to the point where all I wanted was doom. Like I got off on doom articles. And I think it's because of this dopamine rush thing that you're talking about here. Like it became a dopamine rush for me. And I got to the point where, like I really had to. I said something one time that made me think about it because I was so into the whole conspiracy doom and gloom thing. I tried to warn my dad in the Northwest after Fukushima because I was worried about him because they were living in an island, and I thought that the Fukushima thing might affect him. So I got a hold of him. My dad was just like totally rational, totally cool, and I was like the doom and gloom guy. And he said something that really upset me, and I don't think he meant to. But then I emailed him back the nastiest email that I wish I wouldn't have done because it really hurt our relationship for a lot of years. He wouldn't even talk to me. But the reason I'm bringing this up is I think there's a lot of people out there that it happens to them too. Like they'll find something that they're tired of being lied to by the mainstream, and they'll find something out there that might have a little sliver of truth, but then they'll follow it so much they're just feeding into that doom and gloom, and they're becoming what they're researching based upon the dopamine rush or whatever. I think that's got to have a huge impact on culture and civilization as a whole. Like so many people get affected by this. This isn't just this is almost everybody that could be affected by this.
So, right. This is so important too. It's like, why do people believe? Well, first of all, don't believe everything you see or hear anywhere, because I have too much evidence. Like the CIA story that we were talking about earlier, if like back in the 50s, if somebody would have told you the CIA was going to be doing drugs and torture tests with the cooperation of hospitals, universities, clinics, doctors, psychologists, you would have gone, come on, man, this is 1955. Man, we're not even watching Dick Van Dyke. We're watching Lucy. Come on. Don't bullshit me. Don't BS me. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I mean, come on. So, but here's the deal. Dopamine, if you take children, little kids, 3 years old, 4-year-old, and they say, Daddy, why? Electrode. Daddy, why is it that, and then they ask you a question, and then you answer the why, and you tell them the truth, whatever the answer is to the why question. Dopamine is released, you can see it, the neuroimaging picks it up, and it's like floods the brain, and they're like, oh, and people are so excited. They get these same rushes, by the way, when they watch, not all people, but some people, the people probably that you mentioned in large part, conservatives love slasher movies. Conservatives love slasher movies. They have dopamine rushes when they watch slasher movies. Now, I'm not going to analyze, I don't have time to do that, nor am I getting paid enough to analyze that for anybody, but I will tell you that that's the facts. So just think about it. Like dopamine is when I'm playing blackjack, I don't get excited about losing and I don't get excited about winning. But if I get on a streak, I absolutely do have this little door that goes, okay, fine, it's okay to be excited now because it's starting to get fun. And then the dopamine just floods the brain and it makes you happy. It makes you happy. It just does. And so you can literally get this drug-like response, the gummy response from playing cards or from whatever, from watching a slasher movie. I don't do slasher movies. I'm neither conservative or liberal. I like my, I watched John Wick 4 the other night. We were watching that. She introduced me to that, and I introduced her to Lethal Weapon. Okay, because that's before her time in John Wick. happened after I died. So 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 I was amazed by how many people you can kill in one movie. Like, it was just so cool. I was like, and I'm like, wow, that's really something. And I'm pretty laid back most of the time. And I'm like, and I didn't say a lot during the movie. There's not a lot of time to say words where you can hear the other person talk. Usually something is going off. Everybody's a pathological person. They're all psychopath. There's no empathy in any human being here. And me, I prefer like Lethal Weapon, where I actually kind of get off watching people have fun, and like Briggs being, Mel Gibson being the bad guy sort of cop, and Danny Murtaugh being the good guy cop. And that's why that series did so great. So because it's had guy like me who have to have that like mix, and then I get so happy when I see crazy people like me have great results.
Wow, what an honor to be able to listen to some of this information from Dr. Kevin Hogan. I really appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing this information with us. Folks, you want to jump on over to our Patreon page right after this, because this is in full, unedited, uncensored. There's a lot more information over on our Patreon page that we can talk about there. And I have hundreds of hours of exclusive content only available on our Patreon page for obvious reasons. So have a beautiful day, everybody. Thank you for watching. Hit the bell, be well. Check out Dr. Kevin Hogan on his website and on his YouTube channel, and get Coffee with Kevin. Be the change you want to see.